So when I think about Traction Accounting 101, like the things that you have to be aware of when you first start Traction, I'm going to visit the dashboard for a bit. When I talk about entities, there's a couple of places where you can go to add entities, and that's really where things start. You can go here to the dashboard. Let's get started. You should be able to always go back here to do it. Under the profile button in the upper right corner, there is a option here called entities that you can get to the same spot as step number one here. So it doesn't really matter whether you're using the profile or going to the dashboard to access the entity part of it. But you'll just click this entity step number one here, click the green, and that will get you back to this screen here. So if you've been using Traction for a while and for whatever reason you have a new entity that you want to manage in Traction, this is where you go to add the entity. So just hit the green new entity button. We'll type in a new one for today because we'll just kind of start from scratch on our entity. I'll call this the Stark Farm or the Traction Farms LLC. I'm going to start this as of January 1st of 2026. So the year is 2026 and my year end date is 12/31. You do have to set up your ownerships down here if it's not a corporation. So the owner here, I'll type in my name here. And this is I am a 50% owner, and I'll hit save. And then I've got 50% more I have to put in here. So I have to hit the add owner button, and I'll type in my brother. He is the other 50%. Hit save. At some point, if you're doing it this way, you have to have a total of 100% here. Once you do that, you'll have that save button in the lower right corner, and then you hit save. That new entity will now appear in your list. So this Traction Farms LLC is the one that we'll focus on today. I'll close this screen. The next thing I want to talk about is chart of accounts. To me, this is one of the more important topics to talk about when you're getting started. So that step number two, a lot of people don't realize it, but you can always go back here into the chart of accounts area, that initial area. And you'll be able to go past beyond that. You can just click on chart of accounts on the left nav. We'll do both today for you, but some people forget that you can still go back here even after your first year. So this is where you'd have all the most commonly used accounts to pick from. And so from this drop down here for entity, you saw that I had 3 entities already added to Traction. This is the new one, the Traction Farms. So I'll pick that one out. And I just kind of take my time here and just pick out the revenue accounts first that are impacted by the entity. So I know I'm selling corns, beans, wheat. I'll pick barley here as well. But just kind of go through here and select the revenue accounts first that you know for sure that you plan on using. And I guess what I tell people here is don't overthink it too much. This is not a place where you customize these. These are just really the commonly used farm accounts that we give you to pick from. So you'll kind of go through here, you'll pick out all these here. And for me, those look pretty good. I can always go back and add more later. Expenses the same way. So expenses, I'll pick those out. If you have payroll, you can choose those. You can add others once we get past this point. Again, expenses here, just again, the most commonly used accounts. We'll pick these out. We know for sure we'll have interest expense, life insurance expense, office expense, repairs. Even if you want to change these, the names of these, you can still pick them out and change them later. So if they're pretty close, I'll show you how to do that. But these are looking pretty good for me. These are the ones for sure that I want part of the Traction Farm LLC. And so the last step is just hit the save button down below, and you'll see those green check marks turn gray. And so those are just letting you know that they've been selected. And so if you go back to revenue here, you'll see those are all selected. We are good to go. So if you did forget one here, you can still click on it, hit save, and you can go back here and do this as much as you want. So take your time through that. It shouldn't be too difficult to get started there. Just don't overthink it is really my suggestion for you. The last step is to set up your banks. So banks and credit cards. This was an update about maybe a few weeks ago. We made a change here, so it's a little more obvious that you can just add manual, like your checking accounts and savings accounts and stuff like that without connecting to Plaid. But there is a couple options here. So if I just want to do one from scratch, and let's say this is for that same entity that we just added. And actually right here, you'll notice that that entity is missing. I noticed that the other day. If I hit cancel and go back to my chart of accounts on the left, one thing I did notice that from this drop-down list, we'll make sure we'll just select all of them for now and go back to the dashboard again. And right there they are. So that was a little bit of a thing there. So if you add an entity later, just make sure you check that in the chart of accounts. We'll go back there in just a little bit, but we'll just choose the Traction Farms account type. This is a checking account. This is my Traction checking account. So I'll just rename it to whatever you want there, just whatever it makes sense. If you know the opening balance of this, you can type that in right now, or if you do want to connect to Plaid later, it will actually fill this information in for you. So connecting to Plaid it's a third-party system that we have in Traction that allows you to connect to banks and credit cards and just have transactions flow into your checkbook. So that's my preferred way. I would recommend you doing that, but it's really up to you whether you want to go about that or not. If I did want to add 25,000 here for my starting balance, don't get hung up on this. You can still go back and change it later. And I'll just hit save and close. And when I hit save and close, it takes me right back here to my checking account, which is the account register and Traction on the left. This is where you'll spend most of your time. If you have any data entry to do, this is where I think most of the time you'll spend your days doing all your deposits and payments in this area. So one last thing I'll touch on going back to the dashboard and going back to Plaid here. So Plaid, this does have the ability to connect banks and credit cards. I do have Huntington Bank connected, but you can add other banks. So I think it's going to ask me to type in my verification code. So there is a lot of security behind this. So I'm going to have to check my phone here.
Hey, while you're
Type in my
waiting, Brian, are these bank accounts and credit card accounts, are they specific to each entity, or do they just show up in general, in a commingled manner on the dashboard, and you just have to select which entity you're reconciling that to?
you have to select the entity. The entity is tied to that checking account
Okay,
always.
so you couldn't have multiple entities that the same account are used for or is used for, and
Like
and
two entities. Yeah.
yeah, and be able to reconcile to each entity with the same account without having to you know to without having to double up on the reconciliation page.
Yeah, right now it's really the way it's designed, you'd have one checking account is tied to one entity. You cannot tie it to two entities. So that would be something that
You're
we've always
saying
built
that's not
that.
even possible. You couldn't allocate an expense from the same account to different entities.
Yeah. Do we have Scott on here by chance?
No, I mean, the entity is kind of the legal owner on the account, and each entity keeps its own set of books on it. So, I mean, we do it so that in Traction, when I pull up an entity, I'll get a balanced set of books for just that entity side of it. So that's the side where it really wouldn't work for having the costs go across different entities.
If I might, a true entity has to have its own bank account anyway, doesn't it?
Generally, that would be
Yeah.
correct, Mitch. Yes.
Yeah, hit us up, Chad, afterwards, maybe. We can talk more about that. But
I
generally
guess maybe
speaking, you'd have, yeah,
maybe just as an example, what I'm talking about is I would just want to be able to have, let's say, a personal account available, to be able to, grab expenses that, maybe say my wife used the wrong card, to pay an expense. I would still want to be able to just note um, that the expense was paid and allocate it to the appropriate entity, even if, say, the wrong account was used to pay that invoice or to, pick up the part in town or whatever. So is what you're saying you'd be better off to just make a manual entry in that situation?
Yeah, I
yeah. The
think I
more,
can jump in.
yeah,
Is where I've
go
seen
ahead.
that is that a lot of times it's technically a loan from one entity to the other. So, I mean, support can kind of step you through how to do that to keep both sets of books correct on that. But you can have kind of like a clearing account that it goes to, and then the other entity would have a transaction that would go off against that. Um, I mean, the personal side, what we'll see a lot of people do is that you can have family living in there. So if I've got my farm entities also paying personal expenses, instead of having that as a separate entity, you can just put that off to family living, and then family living can have those categories, and that kind of keeps it all goes through a drawing or a dividend for the personal cost.
I understand that. I think I'm really talking about more in the opposite direction, like using a personal account to make to pay a business bill, and maybe even let's just, be optimistic about it and say it was an accident. Then I would still just want to be able to make sure that expense was accounted for, for that particular business entity. And it sounds like what you're saying is the only way to actually do that would be a manual entry.
It would. I mean, where I've seen others do it is they would have like a loan account that'd be set up for personal side of it, and then eventually there'd be a payment back and forth with it to get it that way. So, but yes, all done through an adjustment that way.
All right, thanks.
Uh,
Sounds good. Yeah, just getting back to the plaid part of it. So you do have this add new account button here where you can add your own bank. So you can do a search here. If I do First Federal, there's going to be all sorts of First Federal banks that pop up. So when you pick these, you'll have to type in your username and password for that bank, and that will get things plumbed up for you. Then you can have stuff flowing into Traction that way. I'm going to close out of this for a moment and get back to my account register. So I do have multiple checking accounts here within Traction. This is a different entity, the Huntington checking account. So if you do connect your bank, you'll have these little orange warning symbols that appear. That's just really letting you know that you've got to fill the details in for that transaction. And that can be done just by clicking on these things and putting the details in. So if this was something from a different vendor here, we can pick it out. Again, this is a whole different entity here that I'm dealing with here. But if this was Walmart related and this was not even for the farm books for this entity, you could, like Scott said, you could choose family living here and even choose the category and add your own categories to Traction and hit save. And we do have a family living report for those things that don't belong in that particular entity that you want to keep separate for those things that are used for that same account that aren't really farm related. Um, Going back to your chart of accounts for a moment. So the chart of accounts, I'm going to switch it just to my Traction Farms. And right here's everything kind of laid out for me. So a couple of things to point out. You have a couple of like little folders here and just kind of explain the difference. So if you hover over, for example, revenue or expenses, there's these three dots here you can click on. You can add accounts or subheadings, and we do have a lot of questions around, what the difference between those are. So think of subheading as something like a folder where you kind of keep all your accounts under. So it's not really something you're going to post to, but a way to kind of manage your chart of accounts. And my best explanation with that is up above here. You can go to revenue. I have a subheading called crop sales, and I've dumped these crop sale accounts underneath crop sales. So, for example, that barley sales, the new one that we just added a few minutes ago, if I hit the three dots and go to edit, you'll get to this screen here where you can select the subheading. I've got crop sales already picked there, hit save, and you'll see that that will actually move barley sales underneath crop sales. And this is pretty important if you want to look at reports a certain way. My best advice for you is don't get really hung up on the subheading accounts. You don't really need them at all in Traction. So if you're just getting started, and for today's sake, this is what this is all about, just kind of getting started. Just don't get hung up too much on the heading. Just make sure you have the right account set up, and you can always go back here throughout the year, future, and go back and kind of fine tune the chart of accounts at a later time. But it might make sense that, if you have lots and lots of expense accounts, a lot of insurance accounts, for example, you might add a subheading called insurance and kind of group everything underneath it. It's very easy to add those subheadings or add accounts just by going up here. You can hit add account and you're kind of right back where you just were. There's a list of accounts you can pick from. And so if you want to add a brand new one that isn't really miscellaneous expense, but this is our crop scouting fees. I really don't have crop scouting fees from that drop-down list. You can easily add that here, hit save, and you can completely customize this the way you want. And right there it is. Okay, we had a question here. I have had difficulty creating my own chart of accounts category. For instance, when I create category vet bills, it asks me to fit it into an account type.
Yeah, Brian, I would suggest I would go as close of a category as what you can find on those account types.
Yeah.
The only place those account types get used today is for where they would go on the Schedule F report. So I thought we don't have a vet fees there. Huh, that's a good one that we're missing. That's a good one that I'll add to our to-do list. We should have vet fees in there, but basically today the place it's used when you do a Schedule F, that determines the line that shows up on the Schedule F.
Okay. Going to the contacts. So I think the other question that we get quite a bit is if you're in the account register, and let's say I'm going to go back to that Traction checking account, and I'm going to do a new transaction, do a new payment. Right now, I don't have really any contacts listed here. So this is one of those areas where we get a lot of questions. So how do I add my contacts? And when you do add a new contact, what does this box mean? So just to kind of cover some details here about what this means, we'll say this is the Farmers Co-op, is the name of the vendor that we're buying from. You have three options: add with no details, use without creating a contact, or add details. So if you have time right now to add the details, which means add the address, anything about that, email address, phone numbers, and things like that for Farmers Co-op, just hit the add details button. Or if you just don't have time right now to add the details, but you want it to add it to your contact list so you can use it in the future, you can hit that top button, the green one, which is really, really popular. And that middle one here is used for times where you buy something from somebody, but it might be a one-time thing. You'll never buy from that person again. So you can add that person to Traction, and it will not add it to your list of contacts, was that middle one. But for this one here, we will say we want to add some details here for Farmers Co-op. So this is where you type in the name here. We can hit the More button. There's address information. I'll just add the address here for the office. There's a list of states. The category up here is really important to know. So the category, if you are buying from them, make sure you choose vendor. If you are selling to them, in this case, I'll be selling my grain to Farmers Co-op. Make sure you choose customer here. For vendors, if this is like a landlord situation and you'll be doing 1099s, down at the very bottom, there is a 1099 required box. You can choose yes or no. That would be something that would be something I would keep your eye on. So if you're adding your landlords in and you got to do 1099s to them, make sure you choose yes here. Otherwise, this is just a normal contact here, Farmers Co-op. I'll hit save and close. And you'll see that it's now added here. So type here is the drop down. So you have quite a few options, and this kind of gets into probably future webinars. But if you have just the basic level, you'll just have the other notes payable, these other or family living as well. So these top three would be there. When you get to inputs and paying bills and prepays, that gets more into the plus level of our software. So it really comes down to choose an other here for most of you, and you got your chart of accounts listed here that you'll pick from. So if this was just chemical expense, we'll choose chemical expense. You can put the dollar amount here. Add rows. This is seed expense. You can put descriptions here, put the amounts. Now this is I'd say the very basic way of adding chemicals and seed to Traction. This is just not really impacting any inventory whatsoever. It's just assigning costs to those different categories. And then you could allocate things to fields if you want to, but this is just kind of keeping it very simple. Another question here. So for vet fees and any other livestock related expenses, use an account type of livestock expense other. That will get it added to the correct line on the Schedule F. All right, memo here is something I do highly recommend. So if this was chemicals and seed, we can type a memo down there. If you had the receipt on your hard drive, you want to load a digital copy of that, you could. Or if you're doing this on your iPad, you can use the camera to take a picture of the receipt. It makes a nice copy in here for you. We'll hit save and close. And then it has my transaction in here. All right, so yeah, going back to, I think Scott just made a good point here. So if you go back to chart of accounts and go back to expenses and do a new account here, the account type that you want to pick here is called livestock other. And so this is where you'd call it vet fees and hit save. All right, so any other questions? And we are about time, so this went pretty quick. Yep, go ahead.
I've got a couple. If we're running close to time, maybe let me start with the most important so we don't run out. And I may reach out to you personally as well.
Yep.
Is there a limit of users, and if there wouldn't be, I suppose that would probably depend on the different subscription levels. If there's not a limit of users, can permissions be set to where, like, say, a user only has permission to have access to one entity and not the other?
Yeah, let me break down that answer to that one. So if you go up to profile in the upper right corner, there is an account management area. So if you go here, this shows me being the owner of the account. So if I hit add new user, you can add as many users as you want. It doesn't matter what tier that you're using, basic, plus, or pro attraction. But once you fill out this information and email and hit save, it will send that person an invite to your account. That person has full access to your account, so it's going to give them access to everything, all the entities, all the accounting, all the field records. So I know that is a pretty popular request. We do hear people wanting to, give permission to this person of only accessing this one entity, or maybe just the accounting or just the field operations side of the software. Those are things that we've heard a lot. We're definitely making strides to that in the future. But at the moment, when you do share your account with your banker or ag lender or accountant, you give them permission to access everything.
Okay. I guess my question maybe is more specific to, like, let's say that I have a separate bookkeeper for one entity, and a bookkeeper for one entity and a bookkeeper for the other entity, and I want to invite them to be able to do what they need to do, but not. It's not an issue of trust. Just I don't want them to inadvertently make
Sure.
adjustments to the wrong entity. There's
Yeah.
no way currently you're saying to limit those permissions to just one entity or the other.
Not at this time. Not
Okay.
now. Yep. But that's something, just so you know, and for the group, that's something that we've heard quite a bit. So it's definitely something that we're looking at.
Then is there also can you just give like a real quick differentiation between what type of um, operation would the advanced farm management tier be most applicable to? Who should be considering that as opposed to your other three tiers?
Yeah, when you say advanced, are you talking the pro level, I assume?
No, there's like um, the basic plus and pro are listed, and then under that on
Yep.
that same page, there's running a large scale operation, learn more. What's the difference between that and say pro?
Yeah, yeah, okay, now I understand what you're asking. So those are the advanced farm management packages. So we do own another system called Conservice. So Conservice was acquired a few years ago. It's really focused more on, I'd say, more advanced field operation type things like grain contracts, crop planning, work orders. It does really well at that type of stuff. It doesn't have any accounting whatsoever. You can put in your cost in for your inputs and things, and it does do some field profitability, but it doesn't really tie like your true accounting back to those operations.
So
So
that's not like an addition that adds more usability
no,
than the pro does. It's a
it's a whole
completely
separate
separate
platform.
platform. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yep. So anyone who's interested in taking a look at that, let me know. We can get you signed up with somebody to kind of walk you through that platform. But yeah, we don't really touch it with these type of webinars. This is we just really focus on the accounting with these type of webinars.
Hey, Brian, I would add something for Chad's first question about the two bookkeepers with two entities. One thing we're looking to add sooner than later is that account register today. It lists all accounts for all entities. We've had other users at mixed entities and a lot of accounts. So what you'll see coming here will be an entity filter first in that account register. So would help a little bit for your bookkeepers that they'll be able to select the entity and it'll filter that account list just to see the accounts for that entity. So it's not perfect, but at least hopefully cuts down the risks that they're picking the wrong account.
Okay, that sounds good. Is there time for you to run us through maybe some of the differences in the tiers, or is that a different webinar?
Yeah, probably going to be a different webinar. I can give you probably some high level information of why you'd want to look at, Basic Plus or Pro. So just kind of looking at the software here, I think, most people with Basic, they're just looking for like cash reports. So if I go down here to reports, go to accounting. So if you have just Traction Basic, you're going to get these reports here. So balance sheet, income statement, multiple entities, does no inventory tracking whatsoever. And we didn't even have time to cover that really with today's webinar, but that next tier up, the plus level, brings in more of the inventory side. So you can track inputs and grain in Traction. So you'd have a report here that's got your inputs in there. Um, we didn't cover integrations at all, didn't really have time to, but the integration side is where you can have your like your John Deere climate, those type of integrations, connect those to traction. Do a refresh here. But yeah, I've got John Deere Climate, I've got Keystone FS. Those are all different partners that we work with. And so that definitely makes your job a little bit easier pulling in the field records. So anything with field ops, field records, this import queue, this is all like a John Deere Climate information coming in. And kind of where we hang our hat on the accounting side, if you got that plus level, is really detailing it down to the field and crop level. So you can pick out like what fields here, crops, you pick out your corn fields and maybe look at just this one field here or these three fields, hit apply, update. And this shows all my records for those three fields. And it's tying my field records back to my accounting. So this is kind of where we hang our hat on in terms of tying the accounting back to the field operations. So if this is an area that you struggle with and you really want to go further than just basic cash taxes, tax reports, plus level, the next level up is going to be a great fit for you. That the highest level in this package is called Pro. And so the Pro level, going back to reports again, the Pro gives you these accrual reports, the accrual balance sheet, market value balance sheet as well. So that Pro level will let you put your values in for your land, equipment, which is great for like having conversations with ag lenders. There's also a cash flow budget tool, which a lot of farmers like that. Be able to budget out your farm for the year and showing your ending cash position.
Do either of these tiers address the same type of report, not specific to a field or a crop, but like to a particular piece of equipment?
Yeah, actually the basic level will let you even track costs back to a machine. So you can do that. You can set up your machines in here. And so what's nice again about traction is that as you got repair expense, fuel expense, you can tag a machine and it will track all the expenses into that machine.
Okay, one last question from me. If we're getting ready to start the setup, is your recommendation that we set up and operate from the current calendar date where we actually start from, or is your recommendation to fill in the entire calendar year or whatever your fiscal year is up to this point and work from there? Which of those two is your
Yeah.
recommendation?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. Like when you set up your entity, right? When you very first get started here, you'll have to put your start date in. So, for most of our customers that just purchased recently, my recommendation is put January 1st of 2026. You're only behind, 2 months really of doing data entry. So it's not that bad to get caught up. I think where people run into trouble with it is they try to do too much at one time. So they try to put in 2025 and try to put 2025 records in. And not to say you can't do that. It's just you're overwhelming yourself, I think, in a lot of situations. So I would highly recommend, if it's only a couple of months and you got the time to do it, just put January 1st of 2026 and move from that point forward with it.
Okay.
Any other questions from the group?
Can you just mention one more time the name of that advanced product? Was it Conservice?
Yes. Yes. Call it Conservice. Yep. Yeah. And if you're interested in that product or seeing what it does, we can set you up with a salesperson. They can kind of walk you through everything and show you the ins and outs.
All right, sounds good.
Let me get back to this here. So just the last slide here in the deck. We've got some other webinars. We've got a great one for next week. We'll be covering crop sale deductions, grain payments. Scott will be going over that one next week. And then the week after that, we have patronage dividends, hedging. We got this same sort of session, the end of March, Traction Accounting 101. And we're looking to add more webinars, other topics. So if you have any suggestions for us, let us know. But other than that, appreciate your time. Thank you.